My name is Julie Bevilacqua. I'm a junior at Merion Mercy Academy, and I'm super excited to be here right now. I just want to say thank you to everyone who made this possible and to all of you for coming all this way to listen to all of us. So, I want to start with a question. How many of you have ever noticed that a lot of places, including the TED website, art and science are listed as different categories? Okay, and that makes sense because obviously they're different things. And a lot of the people that I know, at least, would classify themselves either as science people or art people or music people or lit people or what have you. But I have a story that kind of highlights this a little bit. I have a friend, her name is Maura. She's actually here right now. And she is the biggest, quote unquote, lit person that you will ever meet. And she's not a big science fan. So freshman year, Maura and I were in the same bio class. And every night before we had a test, we would call each other and we would review for hours. And Maura used to come up with these crazy questions that seemed to be out of nowhere. And I, being the science one, had to try to come up with answers for her. Okay, so you look at that story and you think, all right, you just supported everything you just said. But this story actually highlights some of the key similarities that I see between science and art. So first of all, if you look in any 6th grade science textbook, chapter 1 will tell you that if you like to ask questions, you're already a scientist. And if you ever wondered why the sky is blue or why grass is green, you're already thinking like a scientist. Congratulations. So Maura, this self-professed English lover, was actually engaging in the key principle of scientific thought. And what's more, she pushed me into a deeper level of critical and analytical thinking because I had to come up with answers for her. I not only had to come up with an answer that somewhat made sense, I had to find a way to communicate it to her. And all of these ideas, a quest for understanding, asking questions, communication, expression, they're all similarities between art and science. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the relationship between science and art in light of these shared characteristics. And we're going to talk about what happens when you put them together. So these are the similarities that I'm going to focus on today. The first of these is understanding. Science and art are both rooted in exploration. When you look at them in their core, all they're trying to do is help us understand ourselves and understand the world around us. That's the point of them. That's why we have them. When people study biology and chemistry and physics, they're seeking to understand themselves and how they relate to everything that is around them. And when people write plays and songs, when they make paintings, they're seeking to do the exact same thing. But science and art are significant because they go beyond this search for basic comprehension. They don't just seek to answer questions, they seek to share everything we learn with other people. The knowledge that we gain of the human experience through science and art is immediately shared. We don't research new medicines so that we can keep them for ourselves. We don't make paintings or write songs and then lock them away and never show them to anyone. The reason that we have science and art is so that we can communicate with other people. That, in essence, is what they are. So that idea of sharing goes into exactly what we're talking about today, this idea of expression. And science and art are both governed by means of making expression easier. We use formulas to convey concepts in just a few characters. We use metaphor and imagery so that we can express things that direct language just can't. In my life, this has played a really big role because a few years ago, I found myself struck by these feelings of wonder and awe that I had absolutely no idea how to express. And I hated that because it made me feel powerless. Not being able to express myself felt like not having a voice. And it wasn't until I started writing poetry that I got better at expressing myself and that I learned how to communicate. And the funny thing is that my love for science only made my writing stronger, despite the fact that people normally think of them as two isolated fields. I can't really think of a better way to explain this to you than to show you what I mean. So I'm going to recite a poem for you that I wrote last year. I wrote it when I was taking an anatomy and physiology course at my school. And I did take some poetic license with the science, but some of it is real, I promise. So here we go. If you asked me if I love you, I'd tell you not in the way I want to, not in the way that would fill this void between our fingers. And if you asked me if I love you, I'd tell you that I could if you let me. If you let me slip past your ribs, I could set up a home in your sternum, keep watch over your heart as it beats away beneath me. There's a lot I would tell you if you asked me if I love you. There are fault lines running up and down my sides, my spine, my skin, and when I see you, they align just right and I quake until my bones feel hollow. The nerves that run lightning under my skin crackle and spark. Synapses snap, messages fast, fast, faster until the electricity in my heart pounds out poems in Morse code. The breath that forces itself into my lungs carries with it the melody of your voice, and the wind whistles through my capillaries, pulling your words into my bloodstream. The marrow deep in my core will learn from this foreign drumbeat and respond in kind, coding love songs in proteins and pigments flung by my heart to the rest of my body until they come to rest in my brain. And once I learned that special cells in our brains seal up blood vessels so foreign agents can't leak out. But this function must be faulty because there is no way the pure and unadulterated joy of your speech could ever be blocked by something as simple as an astrocyte. These cells must have come from stars like their names because they understand that the mind cannot survive on just oxygen. And the radiance that pulses like glitter through the red and blue textbook diagram of my blood vessels gleams too bright for them to miss it. They must understand deep in their genetic code that this brilliant dust and their celestial ancestors were born from the same explosion at the onset of time, which is overshadowed only now by the bigger bang of my heart within my chest. And once I learned that when I see you, the support structures of my cells align to form portraits of your face all throughout my nervous system. And this is how I remember you. My eyes must have a poor memory then, because even when my neurons sing out that this form is familiar, that they can feel it in their makeshift bones, my eyes never cease to wonder at the sight of you. And even when I frame your silhouette 1,000 times within these building blocks of me and teach my cells over and over that their original form was not their most beautiful, my system still grows nervous at the sight of you. If you asked me if I love you, I'd tell you no, but I sure would love to. Thank you. Thank you. So that poem, for me, really exemplifies what happens when you put science and art together. I couldn't have written that without both of them. And for me, writing that poem just illustrated so many things that I'm talking about right now. It pointed out so many similarities to me. And it's so vital that we don't perpetuate this idea of dichotomy between science and art because they're not that different. At their core, they're seeking to do the very same thing. And science and art don't just go well together, they inspire each other. I wrote that poem, yes, because I had a crush on a boy, but honestly, all of that was exaggerated. I started writing that poem because I had a crush on a boy, but I kept writing because I loved that everything how everything that I was learning about myself scientifically in class fit perfectly into a literary, figurative explanation of my feelings. I kept writing because my love for science and my love for art kept feeding off each other, and I kept getting more and more excited because that is what happens at the convergence of science and art. That is what uniting them does. It stirs up these feelings of passion and excitement and enthusiasm. It helps you express all those things that were inexpressible to you before. And, which is more, it allows you to trigger those feelings in someone else. It lets you inspire someone else because of what you've shared with them. That's the last characteristic I want to talk about today. Science and art are vital because they help us understand and they help us communicate and they help us inspire other people. Science and art inspire each other and they also inspire us, and that is vital. They inspire us to create and to wonder. They are the reason that we're capable of imagining better futures. They're the reason that 3 years ago, when I thought I was helping my friend understand biology, she was helping me understand what it means to stand before you and call myself a poet, to stand here and know what it means to say that I love science. I was the one learning 3 years ago what I have only just now been able to express in more direct terms than I have ever used in my life. I love science and art because they make me feel alive and because they help me understand and express what that means. And I can't begin to explain to you how important that has been in understanding myself, in understanding other people, in understanding the world that is around me. So when we perpetuate this dichotomy, when we treat one as better than the other, when we pretend that people can't love both and love them equally, all we are doing is inhibiting ourselves and inhibiting our own self-expression. It is vital that we have science and art because they are a means for people to express themselves in ways that are desperately needed. They are vital to our understanding of what it means to be human, what it means to participate in the world that we are living in. And that's why it's vital that we have science and art and that we have them together. Because when we bring them together, they can give rise to something that is so much more powerful than either one of them could ever be alone. They are our means of understanding. They're our means of communicating with other people, of expressing ourselves, and of inspiring so many changes in the world around us. And when we use them right, and when we bring them together, we inspire everyone around us to do the same. Thank you.